Welcome to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Andrew Bartolotta. Today, we're talking with photographer Alan Clark. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, man. Are you kidding? This is great.
So you started out as an agent in the music industry. Give listeners a quick history for your career.
Yeah, actually, I started when I was in university. I went to do broadcasting and TV, and I thought that's where I wanted to go. And then it just kind of progressed after I left there. I didn't finish school. I actually just went for about 3 years and didn't finish. Just ran out of money, simply. Went back home, came back to Nashville, worked in radio for a little bit on FM 100 here in town, and then it just kind of progressed and moved over to the music industry because I've always been fascinated with the music industry and I've always loved it. And I grew up in Nashville. All my friends when I was growing up were songwriters, kids. And so I just kind of saw the inner workings and thought it was interesting. And then from there, I just started. It was weird the whole time since I was probably 5 or 6, I've always had a camera. I've always, I was always taking pictures of my family, and my friends kind of became my family. And so I started taking pictures of my friends, and then my friends were musicians. So I started taking friends of their band, pictures of their bands and solo artists and things like that. It just kind of had this organic kind of, progression and became a photographer. They kept trying to insist. At some point they were like, Alan, you got to take money for this. You got to accept money for this. And so I was like, I didn't even think of that, And I've always said, like, when I speak in engagements and things like that, I've always said that sometimes I chose photography, but I think sometimes it chose me too.
Well, you've had a fascinating over 3-decade-long career with that. So let's play.
I can't believe you just said that, by the way.
I know.
3 decades. That's amazing.
Crazy. It's awesome. So let's play 3 truths and a lie. You sent me 4 options previously, and I'm gonna guess and see which one's not true.
Okay.
And we'll leave some chance for our audience to guess as well.
Yeah.
Number 1, you sold a camera to a blind man. Number 2, you wore Miss America's crown, which would be really cool. Number 3, the president took/stole your camera. Another crazy story. And number 4, you almost broke the world's fastest supercomputer. So if I had to guess, I would say, knowing that you have photographed 2 presidents, I would say that it's number 3, the president took or stole your camera. Is that correct?
It is. And also, I set you up. All of these are true. Every single one of these are true, which blows me away. I can't believe I did any of that stuff.
Tell us the stories about that.
The one about Miss America's crown, we were photographing Heather Whitestone was her name. She was, if you guys don't remember this, go back and check it. It's really cool. She has been, I think, up until this point, the only Miss America that was deaf. And so she was just the sweetest thing in the whole world. And it's sometimes tough, to make connections with people regardless, but I found it even more difficult because I didn't know how to sign. My mother did, but I didn't. And so I was trying to find ways to kind of connect with her, not knowing how to sign. And she could read lips very well. And so she was doing her best. I was doing my best. And I just remember at one point, she went in the kitchen to get something. We were looking for different spots to photograph her in her house. And she turned around for like 2 seconds, and the crown, actually, Miss America's crown, comes in this big wooden box. So I took it off and just stuck it on my head, and I waited for her to come in, and I just was looking around like, I feel so pretty. And she walked back in, and she just went, "No, you're so crazy." She just was, it was so funny. It was a great response, and it really, really helped kind of bring some humor and lightness to the shoot. Sometimes these things can be very nerve-wracking, and I try to do that every time I can, is just look for some kind of connection, something that will help, progress the shoot or make them feel comfortable. And that was one way that happened. The President Bush stealing my camera one happened because we had a very limited amount of time with him, obviously, and completely surrounded by Secret Service. And I think I took 8 photos, right? And on the 8th one, I said, "Tell me when I've done too much." And it was like they'd practiced it. They all at the same time in unison said, "You've done too much." And I had the camera in my hand like this, and I was holding it. And I just remember looking back when they said that, because I was like, "Oh no, am I going to be killed now? Is this how I die?" And I just remember like holding the camera, and I turned around to look behind me because I could feel them all moving on me. and it was probably 3 Secret Service agents. And I turned back around and I looked down and my camera was gone. And I just was like, oh, and I looked up and GW had it in his hand. And I didn't know what to say. I just looked at him and I went, what are you doing? And then he just said, he just looked around. It was just like Will Ferrell. I promise you, it was just like Will Ferrell. He just went, he looked around and he went, hey, one of you Secret Service guys, get over here and take our picture. And so he had one of them take our photograph together. And I can actually send that to you if you want to see it, but it's just funny.
Yeah.
You can look at it. You can tell that I'm nervous that he's not going to get it right. Like the Secret Service agent was just,
right.
it was autofocus. Thank God I had it on autofocus, but you can see in the photo, I'm kind of like looking down slightly like this. And so, yeah, and that just blew me away. It was so funny. His interactions, his energy, like him or hate him, he just has a ton of energy, and he's just, I mean, you know how they say they said this about Elvis, and that's where you're from. They said this about Elvis. When Elvis walked into a room, you could feel it before he actually was there presently with you, and that's kind of how this was. It was that powerful when he walked in. It was incredible.
That's really cool. I can imagine you have several stories about your adventures photographing both famous people and those that you say the everyday hardworking people. What are
Those are my
some
favorites, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
Just normal people are just the sweetest things in the world. They'll do anything for you. And I love that. And, I think with shooting celebrity and famous people and people of notoriety, there's just a wall there. You know what I mean? And it's to be expected. They will, it's not them usually that are the problems. It's everyone around them.
Right.
And there's just this wall of protection. I get it. And what's interesting though, having traveled outside the United States and worked with people in other countries and stuff like that, it's not like that in other places. I've just been around other people, and it's just like in England, for instance, they just don't really care about secret, the service and bodyguards, and they have them, but it's nowhere near the amount, nowhere near the tents and, kind of sometimes strategic ways they do stuff by keeping people in red carpet and ropes and walls and fences. And it just, and that probably goes a lot with, how we are as a violent people too, you know what I mean? Just other countries are just not as violent, you know what I mean? And it's just interesting. It's a different perspective when you go outside the country, how they treat their famous versus how we treat ours. It's almost night and day.
So off camera, I asked what you wanted to talk about, and you mentioned the lost art of doing one thing well. Explain what you meant, and then share any lessons learned from your photography career.
Everyone we love did one thing great. Everyone that we love. It didn't matter if it's Picasso or Bob Dylan, or if it's Carole King, or if it's Celine Dion, Lady Gaga. I mean, everybody that we loved, they do one thing well. They're not doing 10 things. They're not doing 5 things. They're doing one thing. And I feel like, to me, that's the most alarming thing about this generation. It's not even this generation necessarily. It's even us as the older generation, whether you're Gen Z, Gen X, or, baby boomers. We're all doing this. We're all doing it. We're all doing 5 and 10 things. It's not just millennials. You can't just keep blaming things on millennials. It's silly. And it's I think millennials are way better than everybody thinks they are. And I think it's just not as much of a danger. To me, the danger is us thinking that we need to do 8 things or 10 things or 5 things. If you even look at someone's Instagram handle, it's going to say, whatever. It's going to say like influencer, speaker, and then usually there's dog mom thrown in there. It's always like, it's always these different, things. And it's just, I think we've lost our way a little bit. I think we've lost the way on how to excel at one thing and then go all in on it. There's risk with that. And I think that's the reason why we do 5 other things, is because there's less risk with that. And I think what we're doing is maybe cutting out some chances, some opportunities for ourselves to really try this, to really, really, really try it, really go for it. That's what they did back then. That's what they did, a generation ago, or even 20, 30 years ago. We did one thing, and it's riskier for sure. But at the same time, you've got to remember, you're splitting up your energy in the process. If you do 4 things, it's splitting your energy up 4 ways, and it's just not helping anything in that process. And sometimes it makes mediocre decisions, mediocre art, you know what I mean? Because of that, you're not putting all your energy into this and you're really going for it. It's making what you're doing suffer a little bit, I think. And so to me, that's the lost art of doing one thing well. And I'm, if anything, over these next 3 years or whatever, when someone asks you, what are you doing over the next 5 years? I'm like, I'm really concerned about it so much that I kind of want to spend a lot of time talking about it. It's really, I'm extremely passionate about it. I'm, I'm never going to stop doing this. I will be a photographer and visual artist and creative director till I'm dead, till my heart stops. And but at the same time, I kind of want to help others, help them find their why as
Mhm.
artists and as entrepreneurs. I want to help them find what it is that they love about something, and then for them to go all in on it. I want to help people to figure that out.
Let's talk about your podcast, The Photo Untaken, and some of your favorite stories from that. And then sort of the theme throughout The Photo Untaken of really sharing these creative and world changers and the stories from
Yeah.
them.
It came from the concern of just doing one thing well. And so I was like, well, what is it that I do well? And I thought of, just like I love photography and I want to talk about that. I want to interview other photographers that are at the top of their game. And some of the guests that have been on are photographers for, NASA, photographers for Nat Geo. One of my now friends, Sig Harvey, is just an amazing exhibit photographer in New York and the area. She does a lot of things for magazines too, but she captures beauty in this most unexpected way. And that's the best way to say it. If you go listen to that particular podcast, and each one of them actually, there's always something to pick up in there about how they did their build, how they did their career, how they progressed, how they went about their creativity. And it's very fascinating to hear that. That's what I'm actually most interested in. I just started with the thing that I knew the best, and that's photography. What we're hoping to grow is just maybe the different types of creators that are there. So, for instance, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be able to talk to the writer for the television show on Amazon, The Boys, which is the superhero, very dark superhero television show, adult only. It's really crazy. That show is amazing, but it just shows the darker side of being a superhero that could exist. And um, it's just very fascinating. And his name is Anselm, and he's coming on in a couple of weeks to talk. And he's a writer, and I want to talk to writers. I want to talk to actors. I want to talk to photographers and painters and just, creators, and honestly just entrepreneurs too, because there's such a great deal of this that's just so hard to grasp when you're okay. So you're a great artist, you're a great writer, you're a great photographer. Now what? How do you have a business out of this? How do you how do you progress? How do you meet people? How do you network? How do you conduct yourself as an entrepreneur? How do you make sure that you're doing everything, saving your money and putting it into SEP accounts? And there's all this stuff that's just kind of missing that they don't teach you when you're either on your last semester of school, or there's just massive gaps there. And I'm not faulting universities. It's just, they've only got so much time to be able to teach you 4 years of anything. So marketing and that type of stuff they do teach, but basically promoting yourself, I don't know that they teach that. I know that I've heard of some trying to do this now. They're implementing this because it's just so hard, and they're usually probably going to do it half of a quarter, kind of a semester type of thing.
Yeah.
It's extremely valuable to learn, and it's tough, man, to promote yourself, to be out there and be the voice of your voice out there, not in the darkness, but at least, on your own, trying to figure this out as you're going along. And sometimes it's like being in a dark room with, trying to find the light switch, and that's what it is for us sometimes. And so that's what I want to do. I want to open up these conversations and include, like, not just inspiring artists that teach you how to be creative and what to do and what kind of practices to put in place, but also as a business person too. I think that's a very, very important thing. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm incorporating into the Photo Untaken podcast. And more than likely what's going to happen from that is, I'm already in the process of working on Photoshops and online teaching modules and things like that, just to kind of incorporate everything we're talking about. But
Yeah.
it's going to be, with me in it, but at the same time, I'm going to invite some of these people into those things too, because these conversations need to happen. And the one thing I'm really, really working hard right now is just the diversity that needs to happen. And it just can't be, photography, just like most of the other professions out there, has been 70% white guys for the longest time. And I kind of would like to see that. I would like that barrier of entry to be different. I would like it to include women and minorities in every anyone is invited to me as far as I'm concerned. And I don't care who they are and what they are. Just bring good work when you come.
Yeah, I love that. So what puts a smile on your face when you look at the work that you've been able to accomplish over the past 3 decades?
You know what? It's interesting. That's a question I'm actually addressing right now. And that is, I have spent 30 years creating work, creating brands, helping them figure out their brand for 30 years. I've been doing this for everyone else except me. And so I am working on that now for me. And that's whether it's shooting, it's shooting what I want to shoot for me, what I want my style to be as a photographer, as an artist. I'm still going to always, do brands. I do a lot of advertising, and I do a lot of, believe it or not, still do music packaging. I know that people think it's gone, but it's not. Hey, your musicians are still there. They're still working. And pricing structure has changed. It's tough, out here, being a musician and being an artist and stuff like that, but I still love doing it. I'm not going to stop it. The money almost doesn't matter as much to me when it comes to some artists, just because I know that, dude, this last 2 years have been brutal on musicians not being able to play live and be out and make money from what they do great, and so I'm kind of doing my best to try to help them no matter what the cost is, but I still like doing it. It's a really great true form of art. And so I'm just really, honestly, with that in mind, I'm trying to do things like that for myself. I'm trying to, shoot for me and do things in my own voice and kind of just, really create for the first time. And I've come up with some pretty fun things for me. And it's like little personal goals and things like that. I was in Norway back about a year and a half ago and just shot some really fun stuff. I'd never done landscape or like stuff you would see in Nat Geo, type of things that you would see in there. And so I did some of that. I'll include that. I'll send you some of those so that you can include it in the notes if you want to. But so I'm kind of coming into my own as an artist for just me, because I've been doing it for so long for everyone else. And so that's kind of that's what I'm working on right now. Really, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I find too, as a creative, sometimes our personal brand is what we work on as the last piece, because we're so focused on making sure everyone else is shining bright, and sometimes we forget to shine bright ourselves. So I love that you're talking about that, because I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs and creatives that are in this space can attest to that. Where can people go to learn more about you, your podcast, photography services, and more?
Yeah, AlanClarkPhotography.com. The podcast is also on the website, so you can find that there. And then look for workshops and lots of different things coming soon within the next 3 to 4 months. We're putting together a ton of stuff right now, so that's where you can go.
Very cool. Alan, thank you so much for coming on the City Current Show and for working to power the good in our community.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on.